that sound, Larry? Sound like a good plan? I'll just see my way out of this conversation.
Hey, if you're not giving automotive advice, we'll probably be fine. How's that?
All right. What do you say we head to Merritt Island and talk to Chris?
Oh, let's do that.
All right. Chris, you're on the air with Larry. Go ahead.
It's Chris. I have a 1968 Cougar, 3.2 engine and 2-barrel carburetor. The problem I have after I drive it a while on the days, if the carburetor is clean, it starts idling real rough. And the way I solve that is you should back out the idling screws and spray some carburetor cleaner in the hole, and also same thing on the jets or the screws. And is there any better way to do it? Try to spray it in the vents of the carburetor's 2 stacks, and also there's a cover that lifts up when you push down the gas pedal. And I poured some in the tank, but it doesn't help very much.
Yeah. Now, when are you actually having the problem, Chris?
Oh, if I clean the carburetor and I drive it, not an awful lot, in the next few weeks, and it starts idling rough.
Okay. Now, when you start it up cold, does it seem to be okay? I mean...
Oh, yeah, it's okay then, and the high-speed idle kicks in also, and then the idle's down.
Okay. When's the last time you had somebody... When was the last time the carburetor has actually been apart and rebuilt?
Oh, it's probably been a couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the reason I'm asking, Chris, they could be something else kind of weird or crazy going on, but from what I'm gathering here, you know, you kind of have the signs of maybe a heavy float. You know, when some of those, well, it's kind of like a Bakelite float, you know, that they'll get saturated over a period of time. And when the float gets heavy, what will happen is you'll get too high of a float level inside the carburetor. And when that takes place, you can adjust and do everything in the world on that daggone carburetor, and it just won't make it any better. You know, it'll get to the point where it's just got too much fuel going into the engine. And when that happens and takes place, then you know you're constantly fighting against it, and you've got this horrible rough idle. You know, so that's usually what I find in a case like this. Now, is it worse when it gets hot?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, there's another thing, too, that you got to be real careful with on an older car like this. And what will happen in a lot of cases, if you park, say, this vehicle after you've been driving it for, you know, half hour, 45 minutes, and you go in somewhere and then you come back out, and if it's hard to start, what will happen in a lot of cases is where it has set the heat from the engine will actually cause the gas inside the carburetor to start boiling. And when it does, and you got all these air bubbles in that gasoline in that float bowl will drop. And when it does, that float will drop. And when it does, it'll allow any, you know, pressurized fuel from the fuel pump to go ahead and start even pushing more fuel into that carburetor. And when that happens, you can be in a flooded kind of condition when you go to restart it. A lot of times what I'll do, especially on a carbureted car here in Florida, I'll use a base plate or an adapter that's actually made out of like a plastic or a Bakelite material. And it acts as an insulator. So all that heat doesn't just rise right straight up and start boiling the gas in the carburetor itself. You know, you've heard the old term vapor lock and all of that. That's not something we normally have. What we usually have is just the heat itself. With that gasoline sitting in the carburetor, it'll boil the fuel. And when it does, that can become a real issue. But if it's been a couple years, you know, the one thing that I will tell you is if you're using regular pump gas instead of, you know, ethanol-free fuel, that's really hard on those carburetors. You know, I tell folks whenever I do those carburetors for them and we get them all set up real nice, I tell them, I say, listen, you know, your best bet is to run non-ethanol fuel. And then I tell them another crazy thing. I like for them to actually add some two-stroke oil to their fuel. And what that does is it helps lubricate any part inside that carburetor. You got to remember, back when that car was built, we were using leaded fuel, and the lead that was actually in the gasoline acted as a lubricant. And now we're using ethanol-based fuel, which it literally starts attacking rubber, like your accelerator pump and your power valve and everything else in that carburetor. So you really, I'm going to suggest that now those are not hard carburetors to go through. My goodness, they're very, very simple. You can even pull the daggone thing off and run it to Orlando, and I'll go through it for you. It doesn't matter. Put a new choke pull off on it and get it all set up and let you bolt it on there and adjust the air mixture, and you'd be batting 1,000 again. And probably try to find some sort of an insulator to go underneath of it. May have to use some longer studs or bolts to bolt it back onto the intake, but that would be kind of my plan of attack with it. Put a new brass float in it and get it all adjusted out, and I think you'd be back in business to where at least you'd be comfortable driving the car. Does it have air conditioning? Chris, does the car have air conditioning?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Well, then you know just how important it is for that engine to actually run nice and smooth and carry itself good. Because if you run the AC and you've got a carburetor that's not working 100% correctly, you know exactly what you're dealing with. It becomes a nightmare to try to drive it and keep cool at the same time. So I love those cars. I think they're awesome. I love the old Cougars. They're fantastic vehicles, and if you're going to take it out and parade it around, you got to have it running right. But a float in the carburetor, probably the new power valve, accelerator pump, and an insulator plate to go underneath of it. I think those are your main things that I would do if it was mine, and I wanted a good stable idle and a good dependability factor along with it. So, but.
Can I take that carburetor off and bring it to you and wait while you do it, or come back the next day?
Well, I'll tell you what. If you've got the number off of the carburetor, they should be a tag on it. If there's not, I can do without that. I can get a kit that's more or less would fit several different carburetors of that nature and get the correct float for it. Floats are going to be pretty much the same across the board on a 2-barrel motorcraft. But in this case here, I would need to get the float, and I need to get a kit and probably a new choke pull off, and then find out what insulator plate I wanted to use for that. But yes, by all means, we can do that. But I'll tell you what, we started out by larry@magicmechanic.com. Send me an email. If you want, you can take a picture of the carburetor and the tag that's on it, and send it to me. I'll go ahead and try to round the stuff up. We'll let you know when I've got it. And I'll be honest with you, I probably can go through it while you wait. So, but yeah, we could probably help you out with that. But Chris, listen, thanks for the call. I love talking about the old stuff. There's also a couple other upgrades that you could do to it if you're still using the old point system in it. That's a prime. That car there would be a prime candidate to go ahead and convert it over to an electronic ignition as well. Put a Petronix electronic ignition system in it and get rid of the points. That might be another thing. And a high output coil helps burn the lousy gas that we have to use nowadays compared to what that car had available for it back when it was a young vehicle, so to speak. So there's a lot of things you can do with those. Put an idle boost solenoid on it for the air conditioning, so that way the engine RPM increases a little bit when you turn the AC on to help compensate for the load. Having these old cars and being able to take them out and drive them, it's just a wonderful thing. That is just American pie as it can possibly get. But the bottom line is you don't want to be pushing it off the side of the road when it stalls out and gives you problems. So, but that's what we try to do is keep them dependable and keep them out there on the road. Chris, thank you so much for your call, and we'll see if we can help you out with that carburetor.
Thank you for the information. I really appreciate it.
You're certainly welcome.
Thank you so much, guys. You want to hop on the air with Larry Perry, the Magic Mechanic? Go ahead and give me a jingle.
Larry Perry here. For automotive information, maybe you got automotive questions on cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Maybe you're thinking about purchasing a used vehicle, and maybe you just want my opinion. Tune in to the Magic Mechanic radio show every Saturday, 3 to 5 p.m. on wdbo.com. Also, tune in to our Magic Mechanic YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe. And we'll all get together, maybe fix a few cars while we're at it.